You know, in some remote villages, there are places that people just don't talk about. Places so feared, they only exist in whispers. Today, we're going to talk about one of those places, a swamp with a truly dark secret, and at its heart, a terrifying creature born from a curse hundreds of years old. We're breaking down the legend of Kalasar Ghat and the thing they call the baak.
Now, this isn't just some spooky saying they tell kids. For the folks living there, this is deadly serious. For generations, they've understood that the black, murky water of that swamp isn't just nature. It's a place with a hunger, a place with a very, very dark history.
So where does this all kick off? Well, like a lot of horror stories, it doesn't start with a monster. It starts with a simple mistake, made by a man named Babu Lal, who was just trying to get home from his fields one evening.
He knew the stories, everyone did, but he was late, and he decided to risk it, to take a shortcut through the one place you should never, ever go. Especially not after dark. And that one decision, well, it woke up a nightmare that had been sleeping for a very long time.
The next morning, of course, the villagers go looking for him. And what they find? It's just plain chilling. There are all these signs of a struggle, but it's eerily empty. A broken boat, torn up pieces of cloth, and his cap, just hanging from a branch. But there's no body, just this awful, overwhelming feeling of dread that makes everyone get out of there before the sun sets again.
But see, three people just couldn't let it go. Raghunath, Gauri, and Kartik. They felt like they had to find answers. So they grabbed some lanterns and did the unthinkable. They went back into that swamp at night.
And this is where we see what the baak really is. It doesn't hunt you with claws or teeth. No, it's way, way smarter than that. It started whispering to them, and each one of them heard something different, something personal. Gauri heard her mother. Kartik heard his father, who'd been dead for years, crying out for help. The creature uses your own love, your own memories, as bait.
And can you imagine hearing the voice of someone you love? It was just too much. They were completely mesmerized. They started wading deeper and deeper into the water, ignoring Raghunath's frantic shouting. And then, the water just erupted. They were pulled under, and just like that, they were gone.
So you have two people gone, just like that. And then there's Raghunath, the only one who made it out alive. He ran, absolutely terrified, all the way back to the village, carrying a story that was way worse than anyone could have ever imagined.
He basically collapses in the village square, a total wreck, barely able to get the words out. And what he's saying is just broken. He saw something dark, he said, something that wasn't a man. It pulled them under, and its voice was all a lie.
So, thanks to Raghunath's terrifying account, they finally had a picture of what they were dealing with. A tall, shifting figure made of pure black sludge. It didn't have a face, just this sort of shifting membrane. And it had these two glowing green pits for eyes, and hands made of mud and bone fragments. It was literally a nightmare come to life. But this wasn't just some monster story. When the village elder, a man named Madhavrao, heard what Raghunath saw, he realized an old curse had been reawakened. See, he knew the answer to the biggest question, not just what the baak was, but why it was even there. So, let's get right to it. What is this thing exactly? The answer is pretty wild. The baak wasn't born from nature, it was made.
To understand, we have to go way back. Centuries ago, there was this sorcerer, Bakulan, who was obsessed with dark magic. He lived right there, on the edge of the swamp, and his one and only goal was to figure out how to live forever. He was convinced that swamp held the key.
And his price for immortality? It was steep, horrifically steep. To fuel his dark ritual, he needed the souls of 100 innocent people. He would trick them, lure them out to the swamp, and then sacrifice them, trapping their souls in the mud. Eventually, the villagers figured out what he was doing. They captured him, and in this act of, desperate justice, they buried him alive in the very swamp he twisted to his will. But as he was dying, he cursed all of them, swearing his soul would never leave. Over hundreds of years, his hateful spirit merged with the black mud and all those souls he trapped, and he became the baak.
All right, so now they have the whole insane origin story. But what can they possibly do about it? Madhavrao the Elder explains that you can't kill a curse. It's not alive in that way. But you can contain it. There was an ancient ritual, a really dangerous one, that could imprison it again. The catch? Only a very specific person could do it.
So why Raghunath? Why was he the only one who could perform this ritual? It all comes down to why he went into the swamp. See, the baak feeds on personal desire, on attachment. Gauri and Kartik were lured by their love for family. But Raghunath, his motive was totally selfless. He just wanted to save his friends. That made him what the elders called an incomplete hunt. The baak touched him, but it couldn't get a real grip on his soul.
The ritual itself was incredibly risky. Raghunath had to go back to that same swamp on a moonless night. He had to use the creature's own substance, the mud, to draw a sacred circle. Then he had to offer his own blood and chant these ancient mantras to basically spring the trap. So, guided by the elder, Raghunath goes back to face the thing that took his friends, the monster that had haunted his village for generations. This was the final showdown.
And as he starts chanting, the baak fights back with its cruelest weapon. The faces of Babulal, of Gauri, of Kartik, they all start forming in the sludge. And he can hear their voices, begging him to stop, trying to break him with guilt and grief.
But somehow, Raghunath doesn't break. He holds on and finishes the final chant. And that's when it happens. The sacred circle just ignites with power, creating this massive vortex in the water that grabs hold of the baak and all the souls trapped inside it and just drags it screaming back down into the depths.
And then, silence. He did it. But just as everyone starts to breathe a sigh of relief, Madhavrao gives them this absolutely bone-chilling warning. He tells Raghunath, "You have bound it. But remember, the curse is not dead, it is only sleeping."
And that's where the legend leaves us. The curse was put back in its cage by one man's selflessness. But it's still down there. It's not gone. It's just waiting. And it really makes you wonder, right? What happens when the next person, filled with their own wants and desires, forgets the stories and takes that same deadly shortcut?